All right, folks, welcome back, guys. I am Jake Ellenbogen, and today we are going to be talking about Brian Burns, the news that just came out about Josina Anderson reportedly believing that Brian Burns is going to be traded for as high as a third. We'll get into that. Before we do, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and let's dive into this thing. So, Brian Burns, let's talk about him. I mean, he's a two-time Pro Bowler. He's a guy that, you probably remember from the 2019 draft class. He was very highly regarded. I was a huge fan of his coming out of Florida State. This is a 6'5", 250-pound outside linebacker. The Rams tried to get him. They tried giving up multiple first-round picks and a second-round pick to get him in 2022 around the trade deadline. The Carolina Panthers declined it, and they're kind of wishing they didn't do that because while they franchise tagged Brian Burns, he's expected to be traded. And reportedly, as I mentioned, Josina Anderson believes that it's going to be as much as a third-round pick. They want a first-round pick, but they're going to have to come off their high horse there because you have to think about this. Brian Burns is tagged. So you're going to bring on that contract, but then you have to pay him. And these teams are going to want to pay him, but if they're going to pay him $30 million, then the trade asset is going to be a little bit smaller, obviously, because you still have to do work. There's still leg room to be had. So, when it comes down to it, this guy's had 46 sacks in 5 years, and he's going to be 26 at the start of the season. He could be the heir to Aaron Donald whenever he decides to hang it up. And if Donald does retire, because, right now Jordan Rodriguez said, it's out there. He's really considering, both sides. If he happens to retire, that money, assuming all works out, could go to Burns. Because his asking price is around $30 million, and Aaron Donald has like a $35 million cap hit. So that's something to keep in mind there. The Rams only have Byron Young right now on the roster with Nick Hampton, Keir Thomas, and O'Shawn Mathis at outside linebacker. So they need a top-tier edge defender, in my opinion, especially if Donald were to leave. They absolutely need that elite edge defender. And so I look at Brian Burns, and I think we have some questions. Okay, I've been a huge fan of his from a while. He's one of my all-time favorite prospects that I've scouted. I gave him a higher grade on him than I gave Nick Bosa. Now, Nick Bosa is obviously the better player, but they're different. Obviously, Bosa uses more power, converts speed to power, uses more of a bull rush, whereas a Brian Burns ran a 4.53, had a crazy 10-yard split, and is really going to utilize this speed rush. He's going to utilize speed to get around. So, look, the fact of the matter is this. We're talking about a really, really talented player with some concerns. This is going to be a video talking about a player that, I'm going to be honest, you might not even know about these concerns. I really wanted to dive into, I already watched his tape. I watched his tape in my free time. I love this player. I really do. But there's some concerns. And before you pay a guy $30 million and you give away a third round pick to do so, it's important to realize this. So let's just talk about it. 2022, he was tied for 9th in pressures among all edge defenders. 2022 was also top 10 in sacks among all edge defenders. 2023, he improved his pass rush win rate by 5%, which is a good idea. It's a good deal, 2021, he was 21st in pressures among edge defenders. In 2020, he was 7th in pressures among all edge defenders. Now, Burns, in only one fewer game this year, had one more pressure than Michael Hoyt. So that is something to keep in mind. A little bit of an outlier because we already know what Burns is, but I will get to that and why maybe it's not. Likely it is, maybe it's not. 37th in pass rush win rate among all edge defenders. Not my favorite. He got better in the win rate category, improved it by 5%, but I still don't love his win rate. And I think that kind of it's based on the fact he doesn't have a wide variety of pass rushing maneuvers. A lot of them are based on speed rushing and things like that. So he does have a variety, but it's not like top notch. What are you getting with Brian Burns? Well, the pros here are simple. You got elite athleticism. You got a young 26-year-old edge defender. The Rams already have identified him as a fit. He would complement, in my opinion, I think he would complement Byron Young well. He's big enough as a name. You talk about the player side, you talk about on field, but also the business aspect. If Aaron Donald were to leave, or just at any point, because Aaron Donald's days are running out, he is at some point going to retire. So when that happens, he becomes that heir, and I think he's big enough, he's marketable for the Rams, where, keep in mind, you and I might not look at it like that, but that's also a big deal. When making a trade like that, is this guy going to be marketable? Is this guy going to be a part of our long-term future? That's what you have to ask yourself. He's a pressure magnet. He's had 246 pressure in 5 years. That's really good. And then, his potential is far from capped. But I have my cons, okay? My cons, the name is huge, but the production is very good. It's not elite, okay? The Panthers might avoid dealing Burns to the Rams. This is a huge con. This is something that maybe isn't really thought about enough. The Panthers may avoid, dealing him to the Rams because of the fact that they turned down the Rams offer. Sounds silly, but if you made a stupid decision and you didn't take advantage of an opportunity, then that person comes back to you, and that opportunity is now a lot lighter than it initially was. Are you going to take it, or are you going to take it from somebody else? And that's the question you got to ask yourselves, because the Panthers are not run super well. I mean, the owner oversees everything, which I don't like, including the football operations. So we don't know what David Tepper how he's going to feel and all that, but just keep an eye on the fact that the Panthers could very well avoid dealing Brian Burns, even though it would benefit their team. They could very well avoid that. If they decide, look, this isn't the best interest for us, and that might even be how we look, because we already turned down the Rams. We can't let them get them for third rounder now. Now, here's a big con. Brian Burns is not great against the run. He's not awful, but he's not great. And Byron Young is not great against the run. He's not awful, but he's not great. They're both about average to maybe good on their best days. That's a problem. You'd want to have more discipline in the run game. Another thing is, Burns is just okay in coverage. Despite that crazy athleticism, and I mean, it is crazy, he's okay in coverage. And this is a team that likes to drop guys into coverage. If, Chris Shula calls the same type of game plan as Raheem Morris, I don't know how different they're going to be. But if it's like Raheem Morris last year, you had outside linebackers dropping into coverage quite often. And Brian Burns is just an okay cover guy. Maybe even below average. With that athleticism, that's not ideal. And if you're going to use him like that, not ideal. Burns' win rate has gotten better, but it's nowhere near elite. And again, when we're talking about giving up assets to then have the right to pay this guy $30 million a year, that's something to keep in mind. That matters. He's going to cost upwards $30 million, okay, per year. And that's a lot for someone that's not necessarily elite at anything other than athleticism. It pains me to say this, folks, because I'm a big fan of Brian Burns. I really like the player. I love that he calls himself Spider-Man. He just seems like a cool dude. And I've been a fan of his since watching him at FSU. The fact of the matter is this. If he replaces Aaron Donald, let's say Aaron Donald retires. If he replaces Aaron Donald, right? What does that mean? Because my argument for bringing Burns to LA was always, yeah, it's it's not bad in Carolina, but watching Burns play with Aaron Donald, he'd have his best year of his career. But what if he has to replace Aaron Donald and be that big name on the line? Can he do that? Or is he going to be very much similar to Carolina? And to me, in my opinion, as much as I love the guy, I can separate it and call it like it is. That guy right there is not worth $30 million. You're giving $30 million to the guy who you're hoping he will become. You're giving $30 million to a 26-year-old elite athletic pass rusher. That's what you're doing. You're hoping your coaching staff will get the most out of him, and they likely will, but that's a lot of money. That's the type of money you pay Nick Bosa. That's the type of money you pay Aaron Donald. That's the type of money you would pay TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. Brian Burns, as much as I hate to say it, is not anywhere near that tier right now. Okay? So that is important to note. Worth mentioning here as we wrap up this video, Burns doesn't have a top-notch pass rusher across from him. Some guys do. Some guys need that. He doesn't have that, okay? He's got DJ Johnson, younger. He's got Gross Matos, with Carolina. Derek Brown's great interior, but he doesn't have an elite pass rusher next to him. So that's fair. Or even close to elite. This is a big one. So, like, I was mentioning the pros and the cons before we got to this part, but now here's some clarity, here's some context, because we need to add that. January 1st, 2023, Burns fractured his ankle. Now, he opted not to have surgery until mid-April, and I think that might have played a role in his down year because he was limited all year, it seemed like, with the ankle. He was on injury reports all the time. Ankle, ankle, ankle. I think that had something to do with it, to be fair. I think the fit for the Rams is certainly there. But you just have to ask yourself, is the money even worth it? And it's only a third-round pick, but then you have to pay him $30 million. That remains to be seen. I expect the Rams to make a run for him. They've already identified him as somebody they wanted. They weren't going to trade 2 first-rounders and a second-round pick to go and get a guy like Brian Burns to then let him walk in free agency. No, they went out and to get Brian Burns so they would be able to pay him long-term. That was going to be a franchise piece. The fact that they've already pinpointed him as a fit for their defense is interesting. The fact they've already offered value, the fact they've offered draft capital for this guy is interesting. Okay. The fact that Carolina has plenty of experience trading away players like Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, and now we're looking at Brian Burns, is interesting. But here's what I'm going to say. I think this is one of those things where if you look at it right now, Brian Burns is not worth $30 million. But he could be. It's one of those things where if the Rams do it, I don't think I'm going to be upset. The idea of getting Brian Burns, the hope is he'd be better in LA. The coaching is better. Hopefully you get to play with Aaron Donald, Kobe Turner, Byron Young. He'd be better in LA. So if that happens, I don't think I'm going to complain. I'm just trying to keep it real. There's a lot to like about Brian Burns, and there's a lot to be cautious about. And now, if you're paying Brian Burns $10 million, are you cautious about him? No. But when you're paying $30 million, now you start to nitpick the little things. And those little things aren't so little anymore. So I'm curious what you guys think. For me, I'm kind of mixed here. But I feel like if the Rams get him, I'm going to be very happy, and I'm going to expect big things out of him. And I also think he's going to be much better this year because, unfortunately, while he would have loved to have a great contract year, he was dealing with an ankle. And I really feel like him getting the ankle surgery in April had something to do with it. So we'll see what ends up happening with him. We'll monitor that. I think this year he's going to be much better. He's already shown in the past, like he has that potential where he's just a tick below when he's at his best, but I mean, you'll take that. 7th in pressures among all edge defenders in 2020, 9th in 2022. So we've already seen examples. We've seen bits and pieces where this guy, and more than bits and pieces. I mean, this guy, let's just call it like it is, was top 10 in pressures in 2 out of the last 4 years. That's pretty good. So this is somebody that puts pressure on the quarterback. He gets sacks. He forces fumbles. He's a playmaker. He's wicked difficult with his speed. And just because they have Byron Young does not mean that they couldn't double dip here. If they went out and got if they went out and got Brian Burns and paired him with Byron Young, they could also sign another guy kind of similar to Brian Burns, who had a fantastic 2022, had a down 2023, Josh Uche. They could look at him. They could look at Andrew Van Ginkel. They could look at Marcus Davenport. I think the Rams are going to go after 2 edge defenders, maybe through the draft, but do not be surprised that they sign 2. Now, I'm not predicting Brian Burns goes to the Rams, but I do think they're going to make a run at him. In the end, I kind of have a feeling he's going to stay in Carolina and they'll just figure it out. I don't know why. I could be wrong. If he goes anywhere, I'd see the Rams. If not the Rams, I kind of see the 49ers, if I'm being honest. So that's another thing. The Rams might have to play goaltend. They might have to goaltend. They might have to be the goalie to make sure that Brian Burns doesn't go to the 49ers. Now, at the same time, you can't be too overzealous about that because they could just go out and be like, all right, we'll get Danielle Hunter. If the 49ers want a top pass rusher, they're probably going to get one. So that's worth mentioning. But curious what you guys think. Where are you guys at on Brian Burns? Did I change your opinion? Did I open up some eyes? I'm not against him, but I do think that at that money, you really have to have a legit conversation with yourself. I know he's young, but $30 million is a lot. And we actually know, the funny thing is the Rams might have played themselves here because they offered that contract, and the agent of Brian Burns continues to put that out there, according to reports, like, hey, they're asking for this price because the Rams were willing to give up 2 first-rounders and a second-round pick to acquire his services. So clearly he's worth that. I don't know. And I do think he's going to get $30 million because there's way too much cap out there that he wouldn't. But we'll see what ends up happening. Again, let me know. What are your predictions? What are your thoughts? Drop them in the comment section below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Follow me on all social media at JKBogan. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, folks. Later. Do you love talking about the Rams, the NFL, or just want to be a part of a community? Join my free Discord server today. We're over 800 members. We got 24/7 live chat, a level 3 boosted server, the ability to call into JE Live, playing online games with us on Kick streams, toggleable alerts for when I go live on YouTube or Kick so you don't miss a live stream, and exclusive giveaways. Click the link in the description, the comments section, or the link that comes up in the video to learn more and join today.